I reflected a lot on how that goal setting process worked out for me, and I think actually what I don't like about it is that it in some way makes you stop constantly thinking or constantly reflecting. I think that can be helpful, but I think that can also be very dangerous.
Those who live a high-performance life have figured out how to consistently bring their best, their A game, to the most important areas of life. On the A Game Advantage podcast, you'll get to peek inside the mind of the world's highest-performing individuals so you can learn and model the mindsets and systems that allow them to bring their A game every day. With your host, Elliot Rowe.
Hi, and welcome to the A Game Advantage podcast. I'm your host, Elliot Rowe. I'm also the voice of Primed Mind, the focus app that we'll be talking about in today's episode. If you're interested in that, you can find it on iTunes or Google Play. So today's guest is Fedor Holz. He's one of the top poker players in the world. Over the last few years, he's been literally the most successful poker player, and at 24 has already amassed over $26 million in cashes. We talk about his ascent in today's interview, and we also talk about what he decided to do when he reached that point. So what's interesting is that Fedor has become very successful in poker, but he's now looking to do more with his life and move into business and create new networks and improve the world in a different way. And he talks about his thoughts behind that, the things he does to make the most of his time, the different goal-setting techniques that he has in place to make sure he's being as effective as possible in everything that he does. Now, Fedor's one of my favorite people to talk to. He's a very interesting guy, and I hope you will enjoy today's interview as much as I enjoyed doing it. So let's jump into it now. So Fedor, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. If you could introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I'm Fedor Holz. I'm 24 years old. I'm German, living in Vienna, and I used to be a professional poker player, and now I'm founded a company in Vienna and spending most of my time on this.
So Fedor's being a little bit modest there. Whilst he was a professional poker player, one of the most successful poker players of modern times, cashed $26 million in live events. Tell us a bit about that story and how you reached that highest level of poker at such a young age.
Coincidence, I guess. It was basically, I didn't have too many options, or I didn't feel like I had a lot of options when I was a teenager. I was studying or going to school and then studying, and it didn't really feel like something I'd like to do, and I was kind of unhappy with it. And at the same time, around 17, 18 years old, when I finished school, I started playing poker, and then that fascinated me, and then that's how I got hooked by the game.
Quite interesting there. You mentioned that you weren't finding education very fun. Obviously, I know you quite well, and I know you enjoy learning. What do you think was wrong with the education system that someone who does enjoy learning and improving themselves wasn't interested in, the more formal education setting?
I think it's a lot of factors that go into this. I think at the first point I'd like to say to that is I don't think it's wrong. I just think I wasn't necessarily in the best mindset for it and open for it, and I also think it's very different to how I naturally learn. I think my natural approach to learning is more problem oriented one, I would say, or solution oriented. So I really like to learn things when there's something that I'd like to solve at hand, and I feel the education system in Germany is more focused on giving you the tools necessary without actually providing you a problem to understand what these tools are used for. So here's a hammer and here's a saw, but you don't actually learn why you need them or what they're used for. And I rather have a problem at hand that I can solve.
And is that where poker came in? Because obviously, but for those of you out there who aren't poker players, it's a very maths-based game. Is that what was exciting for you?
Yeah, actually, the thing that really excited me was that this kind of problem oriented or solution oriented learning is very, very strong in poker. So you have a challenge at hand is basically beating better players than you, and there's almost an endless amount of better players than you out there. So when you beat that level of low stakes or smaller stakes where I started, then there was the next higher stakes that you could compete with better players, and that basically went up to the highest stakes. And there's still players out there that I can learn from and compete with. So it's kind of this never-ending progress, and that I really enjoyed.
Excellent. And going through those levels and then reaching the very top, what did it feel like as you reached the top of the poker world?
Disappointing, I would say, but it's more a personal thing. I actually talking to more successful people, I think it's a very common experience actually, in different shapes and forms, and always different experiences. But I think also one thing that I believe we learn through growing up, and that's something we put a lot of emphasis on in our society, in my opinion, is that this status or reaching a certain level has a very high importance, I believe. So, and I don't agree with that now in hindsight, because nothing really changed when I reached that level, or when I've been very successful. It didn't really feel like I'm on top of the world. It just felt good. But I actually would say that I felt better learning and progressing through the levels and traveling and really enjoying the progress of it. So that saying of enjoy the journey rather than the goal, I think that was very true for me.
And it's a theme I've seen with a number of people. Like you mentioned, it is something that comes up a lot, that as people reach the top, it's looking back on the journey, on memories of, that was where the excitement was, that was where the rush was. Definitely comes up a lot in the sessions that I do. And, with something like poker, I looked it up earlier in terms of numbers of poker players in the world. And according to Google, there's 100 million poker players in the world. Does that give you any sense of bigger achievement there, knowing that you reached the pinnacle of such a big, well-played game?
To be honest, not really. I think I've been in a very fortunate situation where a lot of where the way I thought or the way I think, the way I learn, and the people around me and the setting around me, and it all kind of nudged me into creating a good setup for me to become a successful player and constantly improving. And then that kind of escalated into having a very strong exponential learning curve. And I think once you have that, then it's really, you really have a head start against everyone else. And I really, now in hindsight also, or in retrospect, I don't see it as that big of an accomplishment anymore. I think to me, important is that I really enjoyed what I did, and I loved the whole progress of it. But now, actually, I think a lot of the things that I saw as strengths in poker, or that where my strengths, where I thought my strengths lie, after I've been successful and so on. Now that I've been in a different area, I still see things where that's actually, now I believe that it's not that strong of a strength, and something that I can still improve on and become better at. So I think it's more, now I see it more as a constant progress, and not like I reached a pinnacle where I'm better than everyone else. I think it's just I had a great time and a good experience with it.
And then on to the next thing. So you've reached the top of the poker world. You found it didn't give you quite the feeling of success that perhaps you expected on the way up. How did you go about reorganizing your life so that you could find that happiness, or find something else that would fulfill you after you decided that you're effectively retired from poker?
The first thing I did was actually to make space. Something I never consciously did up until now, but it's, I think, a very useful technique, or if you even can call it a technique. But what I did was basically, just out of a feeling, I didn't feel like playing poker after the summer of 2016, because I played 10 or 11 hours probably a day on average for 6 or 7 weeks straight. And then just didn't feel. I came home and I slept for 10 hours for a couple of days, and I just felt super exhausted. So I took a break from poker for maybe 4 or 6 weeks. And it was very interesting to see how my priorities just naturally rearranged. I wasn't making a very conscious, planned effort of saying, okay, now I want to try this, or I want to spend time with this. It was more, okay, what naturally comes to me? What do I enjoy today? And then I got into a lot of different topics, learned about different things. It was about trading, some about cryptos, like just different areas, and read a lot of books about self-development. And so basically just I felt that through taking out that kind of preset schedule of, okay, I'm going to play 80% of my time or 90% of my time, I'm just going to play poker. Now I had all this free time where I felt, okay, maybe there's other things that I also enjoy. And then after that time, I did an internship in a trading company in Chicago. I traveled to China and did a couple of different, I'd say, tried a couple of different professions and realized what I like and what I don't like. And then out of that, I actually founded my company. So I would say that is something that helped me a lot, taking the free time, just trying out different things.
And you mentioned the founding of your company. Obviously, that's the Primed Group. What's the aim of the company?
It's always a bit complicated and easy at the same time, because for me it's more an emotion and less of just a very strict kind of business plan that I've written down. What I'd like to achieve with that company is creating an environment where this feeling of constantly learning and growing and creating things, where that becomes, or where that naturally constantly enhances, and where we build a community or a network of people that strive towards the same that same goal and can identify with that. And that's the idea behind the company. And then in execution, that basically what we're doing is I would say the closest definition is a company building. We're out of this infrastructure that we're building, where we try to improve all these different processes of whether that's HR or marketing. We want to perfectionate it constantly in the specific projects. So we have a holding company, and then we have sub projects in this holding. And then by improving these overall infrastructure processes that are basically needed in every company, we can then create better and better projects over time. So that's the very broad idea behind Primed. And so hopefully in a couple of years, when we have a very strong team and a strong infrastructure, then we can step by step solve bigger and bigger problems, and then in the end, hopefully solve some very meaningful, or have some very meaningful impact.
And that's a lot of fun. It sounds like you're turning business the problem-solving game that poker was for you.
Yeah, basically, because I think I don't like the idea of how it's so strictly split between, okay, I go to work and then I do everything else, or it's like life and work, or fun, work, and family, or things like this. I think it's very fluent, and I think it will become more and more fluent. For example, now we've been going to the office for a year or 1.5 years roughly now, and I don't think there was a single day where I felt, oh, I have to go now, I have to go to work. I just do it when it feels good, and that seems to be a lot of hours a week. And I don't even think of when I feel like taking time off, I just take time off. And I think that's how actually society is developing now, is that this force, I think, takes, if you force yourself into doing things that aren't really a priority for you or aren't really coming natural, then I think your productivity just drops significantly.
Yeah, it makes complete sense, because you're removing that resistance that's there holding people back. So when you're thinking about taking on a new project or taking on a new team member, what is it you're looking to see in someone's potential when they're pitching your project or part of the team, for you to say, yes, this is the right person, they can join us?
I think it makes sense to split that into two parts, because it's both very, very big topics that I think we'll be working on for probably forever. I think projects and team members, starting with team members, I think one of the most important things we found out for ourselves is my hypothesis is if I want to build something that lasts for a very long time, then the basis or the fundament of it is the most important thing for me. So what I perceive as the fundament of a network or group is I would say the emotional connection. There's probably a couple other things that go into this equation too, but for me personally, that's one of the most important things. Is the reason for me to stick to my friends is a strong emotional connection to them. I think that is something I've been missing a lot in companies, is that this emotional connection or having similar incentives or having similar ideas correlating with where you want to go right now or your big picture ideas. I think that's something extremely important for me because especially in an environment where let's say we invest time into each other. So I'm sharing my knowledge or other people are sharing their knowledge with me. I think that has exponential value if you stay together for a longer time. I think that's what happened in a lot of areas actually where there have been a team of 4 or 5 people, whether that's been in film in like the 70s, 80s, 90s. There's just been this group of people that just made every good film out there, or now in Silicon Valley is also how they call them, like the mafia or the PayPal mafia, I think they call them. It was all these guys, they just being super successful, which makes a lot of sense to me is when they exchange their ideas and they're exponentially growing, and then you have 5 people that you can that support each other and where you can learn from, and they're reaching out and they're learning stuff, and then they bring back that condensed value of what they learned in like a week or a month, and then you share that with each other. You just have exponential growth. And I think if that connection cuts off, then you're losing out on that value in some way. So to make it short, the emotional connection to have a very stable and long-term relationship, that is something where we put a lot of emphasis on.
And quite interesting there, it sounds close to the Mastermind concept in Think and Grow Rich, the 1930s book.
Yeah, it's funny because that basically, I think that happens a lot of times, is there's just someone out there that just put it way better than you did or I did in that way. So I feel like I have this rough grasp or this feeling about a concept or something that just feels good, and then I read it, or I read a book of someone, and then he's like, "Yes, that's exactly what I meant, just 10 times better." Or better explained than I could, and I think that concept, that's been really sticking with me because unconsciously that's what we've been doing in poker as well. As I had 5, 6, 7, 8 amazing people around me. We exchanged a lot of ideas, and that it's just been amazing for all of us, I think, because the knowledge we exchanged has been a huge boost in all our careers, I think.
And I think that's a really important lesson for people to learn, not just in poker, but also in business, that we can sometimes be quite isolated and quite selfish with our information and not share it because we feel we're giving something away to the competition. But it seems the reality is the more open you are about sharing knowledge and having your knowledge questioned, the more impact it has for everyone involved.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think especially, there's I think it needs a certain confidence too. If you're working on your project, I think there's just a very few things that you shouldn't necessarily share, where you should be very cautious or with sharing. Like it's more this kind of recipe thing that maybe I wouldn't share. It's like if you have the Coca-Cola recipe, maybe, don't share it. But besides that, I think all ideas and that stuff, if people approach me and like, oh, I have this idea, but you have to sign an NDA before I can tell you, I'm just, okay, then don't tell me. Because I think it's more, if you're confident in that you have that passion, that you can make that idea become reality, or that you want to work on it, I think it helps you way, way more to share it and get more input and get new information and new perspectives, rather than keeping it for yourself and working on it yourself.
Or, even worse, not working it on it yourself. So many people out there who have a wonderful idea and they talk about the wonderful idea, with close family or they have these plans in their mind that that's going to be what makes, but then nothing ever gets done. And a good idea is nothing without effort.
Yeah, it's somewhat true. I think it's a little more granular than that. Like I don't think you can say, okay, ideas are worth nothing. There's so many ideas. I think they're worth something. I think people that have a lot of creative ideas and that can come up and iterate fast, I think that's also a skill that is quite valuable. But I agree, if you don't move, that's also something I've learned. I've been a very I don't know how to say that, but I've been stuck in my thoughts a lot, and not really doing things. And then I got kind of overwhelmed by disappointment or just negative feelings because I didn't really do anything or didn't really get anything done. So now I kind of separated more by just having, on the one side, it's nice ideas and things that I really enjoy thinking about. But on the other side is always thinking about, okay, how does it fit with my priorities and what can I actually do to make it happen, and what would be the next really small step. So what, let's say in the next day or in the next week, what would I do to get closer to that? And then does that feel good? And then most of the time the answer is actually no. So I have a way more peaceful relationship with ideas now, where I think it's nice to indulge in them and really think about different stuff, because I think for the ideas that I'm actually after and the things that I try to work on, I think that helps to have a lot of creative ideas.
And when you were in that mode where you were struggling a bit more, how did you drag yourself out of that?
I don't know, actually. I think it was just a big change of setting. I think environment is just a huge factor that's been undervalued by in a lot of scenarios, I think. Or just the way, the place you're in, the office you work in, the place you live in, the people you're surrounded by, the things you see every day. I think that had a huge subconscious impact on us. I think when I moved to Vienna, when I just left my place, left all my physical things in my hometown, and just went out, went on a world trip, and moved to Vienna, I think that was more of a mental thing actually than a physical movement. I think it was just okay, I leave that stuff behind now, and I leave that. I leave the negative memories behind as well, and the things that happened, and now I'm just going to go out and focus on that thing that I enjoy and that I want to do now. And I think that actually had a huge impact.
And did you have any process around sort of writing down your goals or anything of that nature that you had in place? Or was it just, I'm moving away and it's a fresh start?
That's very funny, actually. I had a very interesting, development of goal setting through over time. So in the beginning, it was more, very simple. It was more, okay, I want to do that, or that feels good. And I set very simple things because I think I was not, it was better for me at the time, actually, I think, to just focus on one thing and just set one goal and try to focus on that. Through my poker career, I became more, I tried to challenge every single aspect of it. So I also challenged goal setting, and I was thinking about, okay, what can I do? How far can I push it? How can I become better at it? And I worked together with a coach, and he helped me to set goals. And that was very detailed. It was splitting it up in different areas and all the different sub goals, and then having quarterly goals, and then half year goals, and a yearly goal, and different colors. There was lots of different stuff. And sometimes I go back into my Google Drive and check out that file again, because it's fun to look back at it for me. So then that just felt too forced for me. I think it was nice, actually. It was very nice in that moment. It was very nice from a documentation standpoint. I think it was very nice for me and very helpful to, at one point, write down all the different areas and write down all the different things, and what does health and nutrition actually mean for me, and how important is poker, and how much do I want to travel, and how do I want to approach marketing and sponsorships, and literally looking at every different aspect of it. And then now, I would say in the last 2 years or 1.5 years, I've been more I reflected a lot on how that goal setting process worked out for me. And I think actually it what I don't like about it is that it in some way makes you stop constantly thinking or constantly reflecting. I think that can be helpful, but I think that can also be very dangerous. Or dangerous is the wrong word, but just
counterproductive.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing I realized is when I set goals, I oriented myself for quite some time with these goals. And I think that's the reason why people set goals, right? This is like, okay, you stick to this or you try to reach this for the next 6 months. But what I realized then is that after 3 months, I think my present me was just smarter at setting my goal for the next 3 months than my past me was free. And so then I realized, okay, if I think that way, then my present me is always better at setting the goal for today or tomorrow, basically.
So what does that process look like for you now? Are you just looking at sort of weekly goals or just an overarching, I want to improve?
I think now, because I felt through goals, I was actually, the longer I set them, it was kind of forcing me into a direction that at the time wasn't necessarily so much in line with where I want to go anymore. So especially because I think my life moves very, very quickly and the experiences I make are very different. I felt I'm losing out on a certain factor of randomness if I just try to stick to a way rather than being, just covering different things and jumping into different areas and things that I enjoy. So now actually my process is more around, I try to dissect, okay, what is the thing that really helps me and had a very positive impact on my life? And what was the thing that kind of felt like holding me back and putting me in like a structured way and kind of actually limited me, I felt. So the positive thing to me was the reflection, the laying out all the different options I see, the different aspects of my life, and going into detail about every area, and then really thinking about, okay, where in the whole big picture thing, how important is this? Where can this go? How can this develop? How does it all play together as well? Because I think a lot of times we're thinking too much in single areas. So I think it's called composition bias, where the single areas don't make up the whole, are not the same as the whole piece, basically. So when I thought about the different areas at the same time, I think I got to better decisions and set smarter goals and just going like by, okay, what feels good right now. So now how I do it today is basically I take this process out in this constant reflection. So whenever I'm in a plane, for example, I take out my phone and I think of every area of my life. So I think about, okay, how do these different projects or different areas of my life develop? What's new? What's on my mind? What's the challenge? What's the problem? How can I connect the dots? And then actually every time afterwards, I have 4 or 5 things where I kind of readjust it a bit. So, maybe I could connect that person from this area to this area, or that thing I learned there, I can take over there, or how important is this project actually for me? And it's very interesting. After every flight, I kind of change my strategies in different areas again. And I think just becoming faster at this process and implementing that into my daily life on a more constant basis, that's basically what I'm doing today and what I want to become better at.
Yeah, and I mean, absolutely excellent advice there for people wondering about how to reach the top. I mean, in terms of project-wise, how are you picking or selecting your projects or what you want to invest your time in?
It's a similar thing to teams or people, but now it's a bit different approach. Like I would say in projects, it's also emotional connection or passion, or there's tons of different words for a dedication, or I think that is important, but also learning and experiences, I think that's also something very important. Like in projects, I think in the beginning, I looked at projects or experiences more on a less, on a more just case by case basis. I was, okay, I do this now, and then that stops, and then I do something else. And now actually I look at it more as a linear development. So it's, okay, I do this project, and then I fluently go into the next project and take all these things I learned there into the next thing. And even though they're in totally different areas. So I'm looking very much for synergies and potential to learn as much as I can in the shortest possible time. So to give you an example, one of the projects I'm working on right now, for example, is an AI project. And there's lots of different things that came together there as I met a guy that is very talented at building neural networks and has a very bright mind, in my opinion. And then I connected that with a company I worked for or with in Chicago, and they are a very successful options trading company. And I've always felt like there's huge potential for them to do more automated trading with the knowledge and the experiences they have. And so I brought these two pieces together, and now I'm getting into neural networks and watching a lot of videos and material and reading books about it. And now we're developing a network to utilize their knowledge and experience in past trades to develop trading strategies out of that, to optimize their trading, and to basically build a HUD where a lot of my poker experience comes into play for the traders to make better decisions at what they're doing, and then hopefully in the next step to create strategies on our own. So this is one of these projects where I'm excited by this right now, but there's no way I'm going to be in AI for 40 years. It's just something I think that very smoothly blends into what I enjoy, what I do, and I think has a very high positive impact on my life currently.
And it's it's interesting as well, isn't it? It's something that's captured your interest in the short term.
Yeah, I mean, it was a person I had a very good feeling with, and it's something I just naturally gravitate towards. It's basically, we're talking about neural networks, and it's one of these things where I just sit down and there's no one forcing me, and there's no materialistic incentive behind it. It's just basically this pure feeling of, okay, I want to get to know more about this topic. So I sit down, I just find out about the best content, I talk to my network and talk to smart people about it, and they give me then more impact, and then just kind of snowballs into this super impactful learning experience in a short period of time. And that's basically how I approach my projects. And then at the same time, I combine this with building a strong team, because that's kind of the leverage or the multiplier for the size of the project, right? Because now if we have 15, 20 people that work in a similar way, and they have their network and they have their experience, and they have different interests and different personalities, but we share that emotional bond, then now we can do something that is 100, 200, 500 times bigger than what I could do by myself. So that is basically the idea behind what I want to build and my company and where I see my life in the next decade or a couple of decades.
It's going to be incredibly exciting to see where this leads in a decade's time.
I'm excited too.
And I just have to say, because some of the listeners won't be aware, Fedor and his company were kind enough to invest in the Prime Mind app, which we made together, where the mindset coaching I'd done with Fedor in the past, we created an app so you can listen to it, improve your life each day by listening to the audios on there. So thank you for your faith on that summit as well, Fedor. Really appreciate that.
I would have said it the other way around, but I mean that's great if we both see it that way. I mean it's been an amazing project from the beginning on. It's just something we're passionate about, learning every day, and it's just a lot of fun to put something out where you get actual feedback and customers. Or I mean, there's like actual people. Like every day, there's 500, 600 people just uniquely listening to a full tape, that's just, and they're rating it positively. And it's just that, I think that's that's just an amazing, hundreds of thousands of minutes being listened to. I think that this thing is still, that's a lot nicer than winning money off of other people in poker, I think.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm in the back end quite often reading the feedback, and it gives me a bit of a smile for the day when someone says, it's done my day around, or I got the job after the job interview or something like that. So yeah, it's been a really, really fun project. Well, man, I know you have to go, so thank you so much for coming on to our first show. I'm sure I'll be hassling you to come back on again in the future at some point, as we hear about the adventures of Mr. Holtz. But yeah, once again, thank you so much, and have a wonderful week.
Thanks for having me, and I hope there's been some interesting bits in there, and I'd love to come back again.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Sure.
So I had a lot of fun interviewing Fedor today. I've been lucky enough to work with him for the last few years, and I've seen this success grow over time, and really good to share this story with the world. I hope you guys picked up some useful information there, such good stuff regarding networks and how important they are, and then also having that goal setting in place to make sure that you're being as efficient as possible in everything you do. And that's what I want you to take away from today's episode, just the understanding around the importance of networks and the importance of having that goal setting effective for you and where you are in your life right now. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please subscribe and support us, and we'll be bringing on more world-class guests very soon. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.